This is TWiT.
Apple did not have a great quarter.
No.
Apple sales shrink as pandemic rally ends for iPhone makers, says the Wall Street Journal. Quarterly revenue down on Apple for the first time in 4 years. Manufacturing disruptions in China meant it couldn't make enough iPhones to sell. That, I presume, is turning around. Maybe that'll show a better results in this next quarter. Although Tim Cook once again invoked the headwinds. He said, "Good morning. The wind was in our face for the fourth quarter." Economic pressures. Apple's revenue down 5% for the holiday quarter entering in December, well below analyst estimate. Of course, I'm sure the stock did not get hurt. Trip Miller at Ghislaine Capital Partners said, instead of playing with tailwinds, they're playing with headwinds now, much like the Chinese balloon.
So here's the problem. If you have a perfectly good iPhone 12 or iPhone 13,
yeah, you don't need a new one.
Do you really need an iPhone 14?
Yeah. No, I was just thinking
the same
is
true
thing.
with any technology.
Any of these. Yeah. Samsung this week announced its Galaxy S23, and I think they were hard pressed to find a reason why anybody using an S22 should upgrade. It's just
right.
Well, we got we have a 200 megapixel camera now. Okay.
I mean, interestingly, talking about, thinking about headwinds and tailwinds, the interesting sort of noodle on the Apple revenue was that if you took out the currency fluctuations and the varying weakness and strength of the dollar, Apple's revenue actually grew year on year. It was just the fact that the US dollar has been surprisingly resilient.
Oh, that's
to the rest of the sort of world having a meltdown. That actually it's meant they made slightly less money, which is an estimate.
I thought the dollar.
Currency
the dollar. Oh, it's because the dollar's stronger.
Relatively.
Yeah, got it. So
so they make less money in other territories comparatively.
Cook also said we estimated we would have grown on the iPhone absent the supply constraints. So it's foreign exchange rate currency fluctuations and supply chain problems held them back. All right. I don't know. It feels like, of course, Apple also making a bet, as is Meta, on the future of virtual reality and augmented reality.
Yeah, augmented. Yep.
You always have to get that next big thing.
They're not going to bet the company on it, I don't think.
They don't need to.
Yeah.
They don't
need to.
I think Mark Zuckerberg saw that the social network part of their business was not going to, despite 2 billion daily active users, maybe he's wrong, I don't know, didn't have a bright future, so he wanted to pivot. Apple, which has, almost 50% of its income comes from the iPhone, says, we're very happy here, thank you very much, but we should probably invest a little bit of that in what's coming, whether it's a car or...
Although I thought it was really interesting that despite sort of saying, they're investing a little bit in new things, they announced they're dropping the role of industrial design chief.
Yes.
No, Evans Hankey.
There is no new
this.
Johnny Ive.
Yeah, since Johnny left, Evans Hankey's been running it she announced she was going to leave, and now Apple says, no, we don't. Do we really need a chief of design? Industrial designers, they'll still have a team, but they'll report to the chief operating officer, Jeff Williams, instead of having a designer.
But nobody could do a commercial as good as Johnny Ive could. I don't know if they ever put those on the air, but they used to show them at the announcements, and he would talk in this British accent.
In the White Room.
Very slowly.
He lived in the White Room. Yeah.
Yes.
Today we're announcing the thinnest, most powerful iPhone
we've ever made.
Yes.
Actually,
you know what? It's amazing. Every time they announce a new iPhone, they always say this is the best iPhone ever. Well, why wouldn't it be the best iPhone ever?
Backwards?
It's the newest iPhone.
This one's not
no,
quite,
this is a crappy one. Get
quite as good. Model. You know what Johnny Ive's up to, by the way? Just want you to know. He just designed a clown nose, but it's a really good clown nose. It's for comic relief. This is the Johnny Ive designed red clown nose for charity.
Oh,
it
looks like the old clown nose to me.
Well, I think the old one was just, foam.
Oh, I see. He's upgraded.
Oh, he's upgraded, baby. This is like a honeycomb with a
Oh my God!
So they do this
So this
every
is
year.
like, this might seem really weird, but this is a really big thing in England.
Yeah.
Red Nose Day is one of the biggest charity appeals.
Do you wear a
of the
red
year.
nose on Red Nose Day, Comic Relief Day?
I mean, you might do for like a group photo at work, but it's one of those things you sort of like buy and then put on your desk.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, because what am I really going to do? Like,
But this
walk around with it all
benefits
day?
Comic Relief. What does Comic Relief's money go to? Is it AIDS?
Mostly like humanitarian stuff in Africa.
African Relief.
Yeah,
It's a honeycombed
it's been
paper.
going since like the 80s.
This is the best red nose we've ever made. Honeycombed
It sounds-
paper construction with plastic arts on the side and a hinge detail that lets you open and close the nose.
Can you
Not
trade
just
in
well
last year's
designed, but it
nose?
sounds like it might be sustainable if
It's
it's paper.
sustainable. Each nose comes with its own AirPods-like case. So you can keep it in your pocket for when you really need.
when you really need a red nose.
It does charge in the case.
But it is-
Yes.
Yeah, but it's interesting that I think that Apple has just sort of decided that it doesn't really want these huge personalities dominating its news cycles, its pressures. And I think we've seen like the last, even the last few announcements, you see more and more VPs and SVPs from different bits of the company standing up and giving these presentations.
Yeah.
And it seems to me like they're really trying to move away from Steve Jobs was always the icon of Apple. And when Steve Jobs left, that was a huge hit. Johnny Ive was sort of the next icon. When he leaves, that was obviously a huge hit. It seems to me like they're sort of going more along like having a squad rather than having just a handful of stars.
I think it's fair to say they felt burned in the last years by Johnny Ive. That it was Johnny Ive who insisted thinner in the face of all functionality, including battery life. He was the one who championed the butterfly keyboard and would not let Apple get rid of it for years, I'm pretty sure. I mean, we don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure because as soon as Johnny left, it was like, we're putting ports back on these things. We are taking away the butterfly keyboard. So I feel this is projecting, but I'm going to guess they felt a little burned, maybe even by the cult of Steve Jobs. But at least when it was Steve and Johnny, Steve could keep kind of a lid on it. And Steve did seem to have a good eye for functionality and the right thing to do. Johnny was designed, I mean, look at this nose. I mean, talk about over-designed. Johnny was always doing that, right? And I think that they felt a little bit burned. So maybe that's why, I think everybody agrees Evans Hankey was an excellent design chief. But the fact that
I think very wise. I mean, you've only got to look at, Tim Cook does not have the same cult of personality around his running of Apple that, for example, Mark Zuckerberg does. And you can see what Mark Zuckerberg is currently, the amount of money he is absolutely spaffing up the wall at Facebook on this VR project is, not something that they would do at Apple. I think there's a little bit more financial discipline there.
And Tim Cook himself doesn't have a particularly dynamic personality. I mean, he's a good, as far as I'm told, he's a good CEO and a very competent administrator, but he's not, I don't think many books.
His
will be written
brand
about
is
him.
low profile, right?
Yeah.
His brand is like Mr. Calm.
But also Mr. Supply Chain, Mr. Cut costs, increase profit. I mean, under his leadership, Apple has become an extremely successful company, much more so than under Steve Jobs.
Right.
So he's got a good reputation. I think, one of the things they did, and Tim did this, to keep Johnny Ive, who I think in some degrees was kind of the Steve Jobs legacy, and maybe in some ways trying to preserve a little bit of Steve, is he gave Johnny, put him in charge not of just industrial design, but in charge of software, in charge of everything. And I think in hindsight, that was a mistake for Apple. Apple went through some bad years. And as soon as Johnny left and they came out with Apple Silicon, their new chips, this is a different company. So, I can see why maybe they're saying, do we really want somebody with that much power?
Yeah, you never want the person to be bigger than the company, right?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, that's a really nice iPhone you have there. You totally picked the right color. Hey, since you do use an iPhone and maybe use an iPad or an Apple Watch or an Apple TV, well, you should check out iOS Today. It's a show that I, Micah Sargent, and my co-host Rosemary Orchard host every Tuesday right here on the TWiT network. It covers all things iOS, tvOS, HomePodOS, watchOS, iPadOS. It's all the OSs that Apple has on offer, and we love to give you tips and tricks about making the most of those devices, checking out great apps and services, and answering your tech questions. I hope you check it out.